Good morning, everyone. This is a Kairos moment for our nation. This is a Kairos moment for our world. The word Kairos, our young adult group is named Kairos, but Kairos literally means the anointed time for the purposes of God. So there is an opening that we've been given. Yet it happened, I really believe, because of the martyrdom of Charlie Kirk. And last week's memorial was an extremely moving. If you didn't get an opportunity to see it, you can go to their site, Turning Point, and you'll be able to see the entire memorial. It's quite long. Literally, there have been not 1 million people watched it. Well over 100 million people watched it. And there is a movement that's taking place on college campuses. It's just a breakout, and nobody can explain why except for we're in this moment. We have an open door. We have a window that God is just graciously, he's opening it for us to step through. And I was just talking with my brother yesterday. My brother lives in Florida. He said, "You're not going to believe it, bro. At FSU, 7,000 kids in the stadium worshiping Jesus." And yeah, I mean, just, hey, why don't we get together and worship Jesus, right? And out of that, 300 people gave their lives to Christ right there, then and there. So there is a moment. There is a moment. You say, "Well, Nicholas, I don't know about the moment." And I just want to encourage you and challenge you to watch your screen time. Watch your screen time, because you are what you screen. And so I would tell you, tune in to what God is doing. And you can see it. You can see that the things that are happening literally around the world are happening, and they're happening just spontaneously. People are getting together, and there literally is revival breaking out. Watch those things. Watch those things. Tune into those things. Allow your screen time to be dialed into that, because all of us have choice in terms of what we spend screen time on, right? So this morning, I just want to share with you, I have less time to share, but I'm just so okay with that because of what Jesus just did here. So if you turn your Bibles to Deuteronomy chapter 6, I'm going to conclude the series I've been talking about parents. And I think when it comes to parenting, I think that we have to look at what is our end game? Where are we headed with regards to parenting? And parenting is about the long game, not the short game. So the question I want to ask you is, what kind of relationship would you like to have with your children 15 years from now? 10 years from now? You see, we parent with the end in mind, and walking with a child is a journey. And it's a journey, you can put it this way, it's a journey from control to influence. Now just hear me out on this. See, when our kids are really young, in the early days, you have a lot of control, right? You're like, hey, they're strapped in a car seat. Some of you wish your 15-year-olds could be strapped in a car seat, right? No. In the early days, you change the diaper, you're responsible for feeding. You have all the control. But as time goes on, and you're not going to believe how quickly this goes, right? What happens is you don't have the control that you had before. In fact, you have little or no control. In fact, all you're left with is influence. So let me show you. This is a picture of Kirsten. I don't know how old she is, maybe 7 or 8. It was a Mother's Day, right? There she is, right? So cute. And you know what? I put her up on my shoulder. "Come on, babe, we're going." She was like, "Dad, I'm not going. I'm 8." No, she went with me. "Dad, where are we going? What are we doing? We just hung out." That was the way it was, right? Now, here's another picture of Kirsten years later. This is probably last Father's Day, right? I need to let you know, I have no control over that girl now. None. First of all, she's married. So right there, the husband actually is the one who say, "Let's work together as a team." See, when she was young, I had control. So you go so quickly from control to influence. So What do you do about that? Influence. We have a godly influence. And so it is this journey of being a parent is to move from control, which goes so quickly away, to influence. How do you do that? What's that look like? How do I navigate the journey from control to influence? How do you set yourself up so that the influence of your child is not just now, I'm able to have influence through her entire life, not just when she's young. So how do you do that? How do you parent with the end in mind? And what if part of the solution, as I mentioned, all the 3 weeks I said this, what if part of the solution is ancient and it's spiritual? In other words, I look back and there's wisdom that really comes from the scriptures. And it's spiritual, not just physical. What if that's the solution? So in the series, we've been looking at Deuteronomy chapter 6, and that's where we're headed right now. And we looked at the first 4 verses, and then we moved beyond that. And today we're going to visit there, and we'll go to verses 20 through 25. And they're going to help us walk through how we parent over the long haul. How do you do that? So let me do a review for you, for those of you who haven't been here. This passage of scripture was written about 1,500 years before Jesus. Moses is leading the people of Israel out of, they've been wandering in the wilderness, and now God says, listen, I'm going to bring them to the promised land. They don't need to wander any longer. And he lays out he says, Moses, I want you to share this with the people. There's a way to live here, and there's going to be some guidelines. There's going to be some principles. There's going to be some decrees. You're going to do this, but you don't do that. And it's only aimed at one thing. All of the guidelines, these commandments, these decrees, only one thing, so that they can flourish, so they can thrive in the land that I'm giving them. He says, I want to tell you some things, and this is what it says. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4 says, listen, O Israel. Now, the verses before he talks about kids. And he says this. We already looked at that. Listen, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord alone, or the Lord is one. And you must love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, and with all your strength. Now, this phrase here that I want you to look at is, you will love the Lord. Now, it's mentioned a couple of times before, but what's unique about that is this. Up to this time, they'd heard about reverencing God. They heard about fearing God. They had heard about, you walk in God's ways. You obey God. You worship God. You love your neighbor in their ways, how you treat yourself. But this idea of loving God is a fairly new idea. And he says, you must love the Lord your God with all of your heart, your soul, and your strength. So what he's doing essentially is saying, I'm inviting you into a relationship with God. Just like we did today, a relationship with Jesus. We open our life to Jesus. And so he says, I want you, listen, which is the Hebrew word is Shema. And it's a prayer, believe it or not. This passage is a prayer that's prayed by Orthodox Jews all of the time. Every day they will pray the Shema. And it's quoted in the Hebrew Bible many times, and it's quoted by Jesus multiple times. So it's at the heart of the Jewish faith is a relationship with God whereby you love God. A love relationship with God the Father. Love the Lord your God. And then he says you must commit yourself, verse 6. You must commit yourselves wholeheartedly to these commands I'm giving you today. So out of that love relationship, there are these commands that I have. There's these things I want you to obey and do that I've given to help you thrive. In other words, we have relationship, and then we have rules. And the rules hang on the relationship. The rules hang on the relationship. That comes out of love. Now, we're all familiar with this, by the way, because, rules hang on a relationship. Because we've actually experienced that in the opposite way, where we've had the rules that didn't hang on the relationship. And it never works out well. Ever been on the phone with your phone company, your mobile service? And you're on there and you're just trying to make a change, right? And you're trying to explain it, no, I want to do this and I can't do that. And you're on and on. An hour later, finally, the person says to you, I'm so sorry. I know what you want to do, but that is not the company policy. You're like, lady, I'll tell you what I'm going to do with that company policy. You can take that company policy, right? Because you don't have a relationship. You only have the rule. It's rules that hang on a relationship. And so God says this. if you really want to understand where I'm coming from, if you really want to understand the guidelines that I've created for you, if you really want to understand why I've set up this life, when you love me, you're going to get it, because rules hang on relationship. That's why it's so important to give your life to Jesus, because I have a relationship. Now when he says, well, do this, you're like, okay, because we have a relationship. But here's what happens when the kids don't like the rules. You ever get where your kids didn't really like the rules? Like, why, Dad, do I have to do that? And at first you say, because I told you so. That's the position one, right? And then that doesn't kind of work after a while, right? Because they want to know why. Well, here's what they want to know. Why? In chapter 6, verse 20, he says, in the future, your children will ask, what is the meaning of these laws, these decrees, and these regulations that the Lord our God has commanded us? In other words, what up with these rules? Come on, Mom and Dad. We're only able to eat certain things. And we have these festivals. Nobody does that. Only we do that. We have these things that are just so unique to us. Like, why? And he says, when God showed up, this is what he tells you. Verse 21, then you must tell them, we were Pharaoh's slaves in Egypt, but the Lord brought us out of Egypt with his strong hands. The Lord did miraculous signs and wonders before our eyes, dealing terrifying blows against Egypt and Pharaoh and all his people. And he brought us out of Egypt so he could give us this land he had sworn to give our ancestors. He's saying, what's the why? Why would you do this? Why do you obey the commands I've given you? Because God showed up and God rescued us. There was no way we could rescue ourselves. God rescued us. God has proven himself trustworthy. So remember the relationship that you have with God. Don't forget that. And when you remember the relationship, then the rules are going to make much more sense. Then he goes on to say in verse 24, and the Lord our God has commanded us to obey these decrees, to fear him, so he can continue to bless us and preserve our lives as long as he has done to this day. For we will be counted as righteous when we obey all the commands the Lord our God has given us. When you're reminded, so I've got this relationship, and I see God's been faithful. There's where God, he saved me. He rescued me. When I look at that, then all the decrees that he makes, he's the same God who's going to rescue me in the future. And then you understand and you trust the guidelines. Because again, rules hang on relationship. So the interesting thing is that relationship, when it comes to relationship, at the heart of relationship is trust. And God says, I've proven myself trustworthy in your life. And I would argue that relational influence is built on trust. The people that you trust are the people that you allow to have influence in your life. So how do you build that kind of trust? How do you build spiritual and relational influence in the lives of your kids? How do you build that kind of trust? So that you can have influence in their life not only when they're 16, but when they're 36. And if God gives you longevity when they're 50, you still have that influence in their life. So I want to talk a little bit about, I'm just going to, on the back end of the message here, I want to talk about these building blocks of how it is that we build influence over the long haul in our kids' lives. So just building blocks. The first two building blocks, I'll just give them right away. And the building blocks are pretty easy to understand. The building blocks are basically of influence are this. The first ones are position and provision. Position and provision. So position is the first block, and that's the easiest one. You know why? Because if you're a parent or you're a grandparent or you're an uncle, what happened was that position was given to you the moment the child was born. So this week, my niece, Morgan, gave birth to Avery Rose. And here's what happened. Morgan and John, just God bless them, this Wednesday. And here's what happened to my niece, Morgan. On Wednesday, she became a mom. That was her position. And John became a dad. And it wasn't like There was no resume. He didn't submit a resume, no application, no interview. Just boom, you're hired. This is what you are. And so in that moment, like that Avery was born, guess what? My brother became a grandpa. That's position. You just get it, and it comes. So as a dad or mom, you have positional authority. That's who you are. Your child doesn't have any choice. Like Avery Rose and say, no, I'm sorry. I don't want them as parents. No, you have parents. Positional authority right there. It's given to you. That's who you are. So they're going in the car with you. You're putting them to bed. But the provision part is the part where now Avery Rose needs fed. And your kids need clothing and nurturing. And that happens in the early part of their lives. And by the way, it's just like crazy how much energy we put into that part of their lives, right? The provision part. Like I see this all the time, like new parents like, oh, we're going to have a baby. Oh, that's great. And they put this thing on there. Oh, I got a registry if you want to go. You see the stroller. It's like, what? How much is that thing? I don't know, I paid $49.99 when it was ours, right? No. This is the best stroller that's out there. And and it's got the wheels that I don't know what they do. They go on air. I don't know what they do. They should go on air for what you pay for it, right? But it's that kind of thing. And because we put immense energy into that kind of nurturing in their life and providing for them. I don't know, how many of you remember, like when Kirsten was born, we had those Gerber, like little food bottle things, right? The little ones are like that, the little carrots and whatever, the peas, whatever. Not now. Are you kidding me? It has to be organic, triple washed. It has to come from some goat farm in Bulgaria. You know what I mean? It's all natural, right? Because that's the way things are these days, right? Crazy. But here's the thing. Now think about this. What is the percentage of influence that you have, the time that you have? For all of that time that you put in, all the providing, all of that, what's the percentage? And so you'd be amazed of the control time that you have. The control time when we go most crazy over it. Well, listen, if you're fortunate to live to 80, that percentage of your parenting is 25%. So we go absolutely bonkers for 25% of their life. Control. But remember, we're not aiming for control because control goes. What we're aiming for is influence. So, provision and position eventually run out. And I know it's hard for some of your parents who are like, what do you mean provision runs out? I'm still carrying my kid. He's 45 years old. Listen, provision does run out eventually, right? So what are we left with? We're left with the other part. So 75% of your parenting is about influence. It's the influence that you have in their lives. So the question is, when you start to lose control, which all of us lose control, what's the influence look like? Does that make sense? What's that look like? So the next way that you build influence, so we have position. I got it when she was born. I'm a dad. Provision. We did that. And I'm provided for her, and now she's on her own. Your kids are on their own, right? What's the next building block? It's relationship. It's building relationship, which I talked about earlier. What's relationship mean? Well, first of all, it means that you and your child have an understanding. And the understanding is this, that I'm not going to fight for you. I'm not going to fight with you. I'm going to fight for you. In other words, our kids need to know that we're in their corner. We're fighting for them. We've got their back. That's what it's about. So you want to build a relationship with your child over the long term, they have to understand, my dad, my mom, they're for me. Your grandchild has to understand, you're for them. Your niece and nephew, they're in your corner. You don't fight with each other, you fight for each other. So how do you do that? Well, let me give you a tip. One way you do that is you communicate in a way that gives relationship value, that you mean something. You mean something. And so any of you, by the way, have you ever heard of the family voice? How many of you have heard of the family voice? No. I'll bet every one of you have experienced the family voice. The family voice is the voice that you only use with members of your family. It's the frustrated voice. It's the impatient voice. It's the you have no idea voice. You know that voice? That if you used it with anybody at work, they would say, get lost. What is wrong with you? Right? That voice, right? Well, isn't it interesting how poorly we treat the people that we love the most? How little we think about what we say to the people we really care about. So how do you communicate in a way that actually says, you're a person of value, that I communicate value? So here's what Ephesians chapter 4, verse 29 says. Don't use foul or abusive language. Let everything that you say be good and helpful so that your words will be an encouragement to those who hear them. So are the words that you speak to your child that you love, are they good? Are they helpful? And do you say it in a way, even when it's hard to say it, do you say it in a way that say, well, listen, they're encouraged. They know that you're in their corner. So when you talk about things like sarcasm or being critical, those things just don't work. In fact, they hurt. Not only do they hurt your kids, we don't like it as adults when they hurt us. So what is your language like? Now, they say this in the marketplace. I'm sure you heard this, that whenever you have someone and you've made a critical remark toward that person, right? It takes like 7 positive statements to build them up to that level. You need to give 7 positives. Imagine how many positives you have to give to when you're a parent to outweigh the words that you've spoken over your child. Because the weight of the words as a parent are so much more powerful than even sometimes the weight of the words of other people. They don't really matter because who are they? But this is my dad who said that. This is my mom who said that. So I could say, listen, I can say to you right now, tell me 5 positive things that your dad said about you. Be like, okay, let's see. It's not really coming to me. Okay, tell me 2 things that are negative about your dad. Oh yeah, I can tell you those right now, word for word, right? Isn't it amazing how that sticks? So when you're communicating, I've got to communicate in a way that gives the relationship value by saying something that's good and helpful and encouraging. And especially if you're like, well, I'm one of the strong silent types. Dude, right now, let me just tell you, if you're a strong silent type, the words that you say carry even that much more weight. Why? You don't talk that much. So when you do, the words that you have really, really matter. So consider that. What are the words that come out of your mouth when you choose to speak? Because they're heavier. They carry a lot of weight. So Andy and Sandra Stanley, they wrote a book called Parenting, Getting It Right. And each one of them wrote a different chapter. But Andy writes this in his chapter. He says, 2 things govern a child's respect for their parents: what they say and what they do. So what we say and how we say it is a big deal. Our words are connected to our influence. Never give up influence unnecessarily. Choose your words wisely. So if you want to build a relationship with your child for the long haul, you've got to choose words that communicate value to that relationship. So let me give you another tip. How do I do that? How do I do that? One way that you do that is you're going to do this. You're going to harness the power of awkward moments. An awkward thing. So you're in a situation and this is going to feel awkward, but I got to do it. I got to jump into that situation. And I need to let you know, when you get that sense right down in your kishka, right? You know it and you know it. It's going to be awkward, but I need to do this. I'm telling you right now, do it. Don't hesitate. Harness those awkward things, those moments. So even if you're a dad or you're a grandfather and you took your daughter out when she was like 6 or 7, you said, okay, we're going to have a daddy-daughter date. You took her out. Now she's 20. You're thinking, you know what? I kind of miss us. But it's going to really feel awkward. Like, Kirsten's 20. What would she say if I said, come on, girl, let's go out and let's do a daddy-daughter date? Oh, Dad, come on already. Well, it's always a risk. It's a risk. I'll tell you right now, just pull any woman right now who had a dad or a grandpa who took them out when they were 6 and now it's 20. They're going to say, no way, I don't want to go out with you, Grandpa. No, they're going to welcome that. And when you do it, the rewards the payoff is huge. Or maybe you weren't in you just didn't tell them. For whatever reason, you grew up a stoic family. You never told your kids you love them. You weren't a hugging family. And now your son is 15, and you know beyond a shadow of a doubt, he's gone through something, and you know, my son needs a hug right now, but I haven't hugged him. What do? You harness that awkward moment and say, listen, I don't care what, you say, son, can I just give you a hug right now? And maybe you'll say no, but at least you tried, right? At least you said, you put yourself out there, and you said, I'm going to do that because, again, I want to show you and demonstrate value. And so, listen, if he's 15, I get it, he smells. But I mean, if he's 50, it might even be more awkward. But nevertheless, it's better that you ask him and he says no than never asking at all. I mean, last week I talked about the value of being able to look your child in the eye and tell them what God sees. It's very, very powerful for those things to happen. But there's a risk involved. How God sees. So, by the way, did you do that? Did you find your child, and the child could be 30. Say, listen, I just want to tell you something. This is what I see. This is what I see in you. I see a courageous young man. Son, daughter, have I told you how proud I am of you? Do it. Do it. Do it. Speaking from the heart, I'll tell you what, it's not always easy. And it's awkward, but I'm telling you the payoff is unbelievable. And it's how you communicate value to somebody. So for a lot of people, and parents in particular, you know what? We get to this relationship building block, and maybe you've done that, like you risked, right? You're out there, and we do it, and maybe we didn't get the response that we thought we were going to do. You wrote them the letter, you got nothing back, right? Nothing. And so you figured, you know what? I guess my relationship's over. You know, she's 25, she's on her own, it's over. It's not over. It's not over. So you keep on risking. So how do you communicate value? And how do you move beyond relationship to something that's even deeper and more meaningful? And the next block for me anyways is the block of integrity. Integrity basically for me is just this, that I'm going to prioritize my faith in how I live. Prioritize faith in how you live. So listen, how you talk about your faith is as important as how you live your faith. And the closer those things that are together, that's the more integrity that you have. So if you bring your son and daughter here, which is awesome, I talked about that last week, bringing them here consistently, bringing them here, that's great. And they'll listen to me, or if they're younger, they're going to be listening to one of their teachers. So you brought them here to have a spiritual investment poured into their life. That's wonderful. But if you don't live that way, the 6 days afterwards, you know what you don't have? You don't have spiritual integrity. You just don't. And the further apart you are about talking about your faith and the way that you live your faith, the less inspiring your life is going to be to follow. So here's what it says in Proverbs chapter 20, verse 7. It says, the godly walk with integrity. But then it says, blessed are the children who follow them. So you want to bless your kids? Have the faith that you talk about, and then have the faith that you live. And the closer they are together, not further apart, the closer that they are, then you have integrity. So how do I do that? Okay, what do you mean? Okay, again, let me give you a tip. Have your kids catch you living your faith. Catch you. So what happens is, they're going downstairs and they just knock on the door and they come in here, they see your dad, they see you praying on your knees for them. They caught you. Oh, sorry, Dad, I didn't mean to disturb you. You get downstairs, and there's Mom. She's reading her Bible right there in front of you. Mom, I'm sorry. They caught you living out your faith. Or you're at Walmart, and there you're helping. Here are the kids, you got the stuff, and you see somebody in need, and you take the time to say, listen, can I help you? They caught you living out your faith. One of the memories that happened with me, just living out the faith, these are very practical ways. So maybe I told you this before. We're on the way to a Mets game. And this is what my brother Michael, who's 19 years younger than me, he was a pipsqueak. My dad had him on his shoulder. And we didn't go to a lot of Mets games. So we're walking to the stadium. We always parked miles away, it seemed. So we're on the shoulder. My brother's on the shoulder. We're walking. All of a sudden, we're on the way to the stadium, and a fight breaks out right in front of us. What does my dad do? He takes my brother off the shoulder and gets right in and says, guys, stop. We're here for the game. He entered into the fray. I'm like, what? Dad, you could have been killed, right? No, it was because my father cared for these two people. They were doing stupid, and they're just getting angry in the heat of the moment, saying, guys, you don't want to do this. You don't want to do this. Let's break it up right now. And they did. And it was a demonstration for me that says, listen, we have a God who breaks into our stupid. And he says, no, peace. Peace. That's my dad. I caught him living out his faith. And I would do that a lot, catch my dad living out his faith. So get caught living out your faith in front of them. Now, it can't be like, okay, they're coming down the stairs, and you get at the table, oh, Lord Jesus, help you. Really? That's the opposite of integrity. Now, some of you, you're young, and you've got young kids. You're like, Nicholas, I can't get involved in anything. My kids are like they just basically drive me crazy. They're I don't do this. I can't even be with other people. Listen, yes, you can. And maybe you can't, like, I can't attend a life group. What you can do is invite people over to your house. You share dinner. Yeah, the kids are running around, whatever. You share dinner. You share a meal together. You have this time where you're talking. And not only that, but then you put the kids to bed, and then you start to share. You start to pray for one another at that little gathering there. Hey, listen, you start to talk about Jesus. Guess whose little ears are hearing what you're talking about? Guess what little ears are hearing you pray for your kids who are praying. You understand how that works? Live it out in front of them. Let them catch you. Get caught, live it out your faith. Why? Because the more that you do that, live out your faith, you're going to have wisdom. And people with integrity are people you go to for wisdom. You don't go to wisdom for people who don't have integrity. They could be friends. Okay, I have a relationship with them, but I've never asked them for advice because they don't have integrity. Integrity, when it comes to faith, means your kids are going to come and they're going to ask wisdom. Dad, what do I do about this? I'm in this situation. I have a really hard time. Okay, here we go. Last one is the hardest one. Are you still there? 10:27, 3 minutes to go. But who's talking about the clock? Inspire. This one's at the top of the heap, and it's the hardest, I think. Inspire. Inspire your kids with your faith. Inspire your kids with your faith. I think Charlie Kirk did that better than anybody that I know. You know, he knew that there were death threats on his life. He knew that. I mean, what guy goes to a college campus and says, here, I'm giving the mic away to people that oppose me. And hears them say horrible things toward him. And he wouldn't agree necessarily, and he might say some things that were like really direct. I don't know, this is what God says. But nevertheless, it wasn't that they walked away feeling like, oh my goodness, this guy is such a jerk. No, in fact, that was not the reports that you hear at all. Inspire your kids with your faith. And that means basically this: you never stop. You never stop pursuing a life where Jesus increases and you decrease. Never stop. Never stop wanting more of Jesus. Never stop wanting to grow more and more and knowing who he is. And so if you're here today or you're retired or going to be retiring, listen, here's what I want to encourage you to do. Don't retire your faith. Your faith doesn't retire. In fact, your faith grows. That's what's going to inspire people, is when they see your faith and it grows and increases. So it's not time to say, okay, listen, I'm ready to sip pina coladas by the beach and wherever. No, it's time to grow and to be engaged. So here's what Paul says in Philippians chapter 3, verse 8. He says, yes, everything else is worthless compared to with the infinite knowledge of knowing Christ Jesus. Everything is worthless compared to that. For his sake, I have discarded everything else, counting it all as garbage, so that I could gain one thing, Christ in my life. So here's an inspired tip, is that you would model a faith that grows with your age. Model a faith that grows with your age. So when they're younger, yeah, sure. So they're going to bump into you reading your Bible, or bumping into praying, bumping into, hey, boy, they helped out the neighbors, and I see my dad's faith. But as you get older, may they see you taking even bigger steps of faith, that you trust Jesus even more at that age. And grandparents, you should be taking the biggest steps. Yeah, travel, enjoy your golden years, winter in Florida in the condo, whatever. But those things aren't going to inspire anybody. Grow in your faith where you're inspiring, where people are looking at you and say, yeah, that's who I want to be. So what's it look like to live your life in the back half that way? Use your second half to grow in your faith, to have a bigger heart for Jesus. So my dad died a few years ago, and what a big man he was, with a big, big heart. And I'll never forget, after he retired, one of the guys in his church, my dad was an electrician, so there was a guy who was an electrician, so they had a bond. But this kid, he wasn't a kid, he was in his 40s, developed an alcohol problem, and it basically ended up in jail. And it wreaked all sorts of havoc in his relationship, his marriage, and I'm looking at it, I'm here, and I'm seeing it, but Dad's pouring into this guy's life, pouring. He goes to visit him in jail. He gets out of jail. He's right there. He's going. I'm like, Dad, what? This guy's this, Dad, this. My dad didn't think this. My dad thought, I got to live this out. This guy, I'm here for him. I'm here for him. The guy moves to Florida. My dad said, when you get to Florida, you need to sign in. You need to go to Teen Challenge. And he wasn't a teen at all. I said he was in 40s. And he went to Teen Challenge, and he got radically set free. And it was amazing. To this day, he will look back, and he said about my dad, he said, my dad was a single influence in that part of his life. Retired electrician saying, my job ain't over, because now influence goes to another level. Do you see how that is? My mom attends 3 prayer meetings a week. She's 92. And she doesn't drive. 3. Because why? That's her mission, is to pray with people. She's always on the phone. How many times we go home? I'm going to make a 4-hour trip, right, to Albany. Where's Mom? She's in the bathroom praying with somebody. I'm like, hey, what? What about us? Or I'd be on a long-distance call. I'm calling from who knows where. And all of a sudden, there's silence on the phone. Hello? Mom's praying with somebody. She's got a call. She took the call. That's my son, whatever. I got to pray with this person. Just called. Do you understand? Grow in your influence, whatever that influence is. You don't need to be my dad. You don't need to be my mom. They're their own people, but you know where your area of influence is. Grow in that area of influence. And don't let it slack. Because I'll tell you right now, at the end of the day, and I can promise you, that in your final days, that's all you'll care about. In your final days, my friend, you're not going to care about your cars. You're not going to, look at the beautiful addition we put on the house. Isn't that wonderful? They won't care what RV you drove and the places you visited. You're only going to care about one thing. Did I do enough to inspire my kids to want to know Jesus? Because that's the relationship that's going to last forever. right? We're part of a forever family. One of the most moving things that ever happened in my life was, and I've shared this story before, was when my brother James was 15, he was diagnosed with stomach cancer, and he was the youngest, Nicky, Timmy, Tommy, Jimmy. Well, Mikey came afterwards. But there he is, Jimmy. And boy, did we wrestle with that. And we prayed, and God actually did a miracle. They were able to take the tumor out of his stomach. It was like a football. They took it out of his stomach, 15-year-old, right? And he was doing good for about 2 years, and then the cancer came back with a vengeance. And my brother just got bitter, like, why me? Why me? None of my friends have cancer. None of my friends lost their hair and do chemo. Why me? And he got bitter. You can understand how that would happen. So he just kind of walked away from anything and everything God. He didn't want to know nothing. He's getting sicker and sicker and sicker, and we're praying and praying and praying until one night it broke. And he was lying in his bed, and my mom said to him, son, listen, Jimmy, we love you so much. We want to spend eternity with you. Don't you want to be together forever? And in that moment, something broke in my brother, and he broke down. He said, yeah, Mom, that's what I want. And in the next year of his life, my brother's physical health was going like this, but his spiritual health was going like this. And he was growing closer and closer. Yeah, well, did we pray for a miracle? Absolutely we did, because God can do that. But we saw my brother, that he's going to church with an oxygen tank, and he's saying, when I would come home and say, Nick, why don't you play some of those songs we used to sing in church? We'd be singing as much as he could sing, right? Because you want to know, that's the thing. That's the thing that's going to last forever. You're ever, forever, forever. That you would have over the long haul, parent with influence. The control you have is only 25% of their life. You have 75% of their life is the influence that you have. So what building block are you on? Say, Nicholas, I'm on the relational one. That's where I got to work on. I've got to work on that. I got to harness those awkward moments because I'm not like trained to do, I pull away. No, go for them. Or maybe it's the integrity. Say, Nicholas, there's a big, big gap between what I talk and what I live. And I got to close the gap. That's it. And say, as I'm getting older, I don't want to trail off. But as I'm getting older, I want to grow in my influence in their life. And I want to make my commitment to Jesus even greater so that I'm able to inspire them, right? Does that make sense? So I want to pray with you right now. So you just bow your heads. And here's what we're going to do. I'm going to pray for you. And I just want to say this, like sometimes you hear messages like this, and the point of the message is not to shame you or guilt you, because everybody's got a different relationship. We're all over the map in terms of our relationship with our kids and our grandkids. But I would like to say this, would you fight for your kids? Fight for them. Fight for them in the way that you speak to them. Fight for them in the way that you live out your faith. Fight for them in the way that you seek to inspire them. Fight so that the spiritual influence that you have over them would grow and grow and grow. And for those of you who feel like right now, Nicholas, I'm done. What do you mean spiritual influence? I don't have spiritual influence. I'm out. Listen, you're not out. And we're going to pray right now. You bring your children to Jesus right now. Would you do that? And Father, I want to pray for every parent, every grandparent, every aunt, every uncle that's in this house right now. And there are kids that you have placed in their lives. And it started out as a position because they were born. And they've provided education, they've provided clothing, maybe they provided a car, they provided stuff, and it's been great. But God, beyond that, we want the relationship. And so God, I pray that you would draw those kids in relationship back to you, Jesus, back to you, Jesus. That those kids would know how much we value them. That I'm not fighting with you. I'm fighting for you, my girl. I'm fighting for you, my son. As we grow older, God, give us the passion that says we're going to grow older, but we're growing stronger in our influence. We're going to be even more sold out for Jesus than we were before. So that our children and their children and our nieces and our nephews and the people that we have relationship would be inspired by the way that we live. I thank you for that in Jesus' name. Amen. Let's stand as the worship team closes us out as we speak Jesus.